You're listening to Innovators Can Laugh, the fun startup podcast. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Eric Melcher. And on Innovators Can Laugh, we investigate a new topic each week and interview some of the most innovative minds in the startup scene here in Europe. My goal is to turn my guests' wisdom into actionable advice that you can use to grow your business. No matter your industry, I'm here to uncover value from my guests by doing the proper research and asking the right questions. And at the end of each interview, we have a little fun where my guests reveal fun and interesting facts about themselves, the stuff you won't see on their LinkedIn profile. If you're new to the show, I'm a marketing geek and head of partnerships at tech startup Bonjoro. I'm also an American expat living in Romania. If you're curious about other European startups and what they're doing to scale, gain customers, or things that they do to differentiate themselves, hit the subscribe button because you'll love it here at Innovators Can Laugh podcast. Also, you can play the Innovators Can Laugh game and have an opportunity to compete against other startup folks on Twitter. Just look for the hashtag Innovators Can Laugh. Hey, ICO fans, in this episode of Innovators Can Laugh, we are going to be talking about how to find your first early adopters with Avi Negrion. He is the founder of SocialBee. SocialBee is a very cool social media platform where you can plan all of your social content across LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram, and other social channels and find new customers through social media. But Avi is a master in finding early adopters. He's also a startup mentor at the Founders Institute in Frankfurt and in Romania as well. And he also has a lot of ideas because he's a remote CEO on tools that you can use to streamline efficiency for your company. So if you are looking to find your first customers, early adopters, this episode is for you as he shares a lot of tactics and strategies on what he did to find customers for his first couple of startups. And I think you'll find this information extremely, extremely valuable and fun, because we also get into some fun stuff like when did Avi have his first kiss and some other things. Okay. Anyway, let's dive in. I think you're going to enjoy it. All right, Avi, I want to start with Nugget. This is another app that you help co-found, and Nugget was like Tinder for quotes from books. What was the idea behind creating Nugget?
Yeah, sure. So basically, we started Nugget maybe 6.5, 7 years ago, something like that. And I was always, and I still read a lot of business books. And it's hard to remember everything that you read in these business books. And especially back then, there was this trend with sharing quotes on the internet. So basically, I liked a lot to take out quotes from these business books that I was reading, but I wanted a way to be able to remember them and to revisit them, and maybe even to discover books by discovering such type of quotes. So we actually started with a very simple MVP that was just me summarizing a book and taking the quotes out from the book, and then putting them in a spreadsheet, and then creating a nice PowerPoint, putting them on slideshare.net. And we were featured actually by Slideshare. We got a few people who subscribed to download like more of these nuggets. And then we decided, okay, maybe we're onto something and we should turn this into but as we found out later, it was a vitamin and not a painkiller. So even though we managed to get users to download it and to use it, it was quite hard to monetize and to keep people coming back over and over. So it would have been quite hard to turn from just like a startup into an actual, but luckily, in working on Nugget, we found out some techniques that work for us to grow on social media. And we were building internally some tools to help us with that. And at one point, somebody from our audience kept asking us like how we were doing that. And we decided that we should maybe try to spin that out. And then that's how we got to build SocialBee. And once we started seeing that people are willing to pay for SocialBee, which they were not for Nugget, we said, okay, let's just double down on SocialBee. And we started working on Nugget since, and just focused on SocialBee almost like 6 years ago now.
Okay, we're going to get into SocialBee for a second, but you mentioned something about the MVP in Slideshare. So Did you know right away that Slideshare was a good channel to start promoting Nugget first? Or were you considering other channels to try to promote it?
I think SlideShare is not as popular nowadays as it used to be, but at least back then it was quite popular. People were sharing SlideShares left and right. And uh, I don't know if it was the best channel, but it was the channel that fit our MVP approach because it was relatively easy to just come up with that
Okay.
PowerPoint to put it up there. And then basically we also included the SlideShare embed onto a page where if people wanted to subscribe to give us their email address, they would have gotten much more nuggets from, it was Peter Thiel's 0 to 1, that book that we first nuggetized. And we try to promote it in various entrepreneurship groups and business book groups and all sorts of things. So probably this is how we got the first views also on those SlideShare deck. But then we were lucky that the SlideShare editorial team said, okay, this is something that we want to promote. And then it was on their homepage for a few hours, which really brought us a lot more views. And then it validated to some extent our idea.
Okay. And in terms of creating the app, is this something that you created? Did you do all the coding and the developing behind it? Or did you work with the team to do this?
Actually, with Nugget, we were a team of 4 that were all co-founders. And between the 4 of us, we had experience in coding the backend, the mobile apps, the design part, and then the marketing and business as well. So it was all done by the team of co-founders.
Okay. And before we get into Social B, if you could put one quote on a billboard, on a big billboard, maybe in Times Square or something, what would that one quote be, Avi?
I think it would be like a take on Nike's Just Do It, and it would be just get started. Because if we wouldn't have gotten started with Nugget, which is basically failed. We managed to sell Nugget to somebody who was still in the space, but from our point of from what we wanted to do, it was not a success. But if we would have not gotten on that wrong road, let's say so, we would have not been able to pivot and to then work on Social B. And that's why I think it's much more important to really get started, even if the idea is not perfect, because first of all, you might stumble into an idea that is much better, but even if you don't, you will learn so much that you will be better off by having started and having tried to do something.
Okay, let's talk about one of the things that you were learning while you were trying to grow Nugget. And one of the things that you learned, you mentioned this earlier, is that you were gaining traction. You were building tools to help streamline your social media activity. And before Social B was fully built, you started selling the product, which we'll get into the second. So Social B, I'm using it right now. One of the key benefits of Social B is that it's easy to put your social profiles on autopilot, like set it and forget it. How did you first start using this for Nugget? And when did you discover that this would be valuable to brands?
One of the main things that we did for Nugget, so we took a lot of business books and we had a team of freelancers that was actually reading them, going through those books and taking out these quotes and then creating also a summary. So all of this content was a lot of content, and it was a lot of evergreen content, which means that a good quote that you share today is probably going to be relevant a few months or even years from now. So because of that, we had a lot of content that we wanted to share, but we also wanted to reshare that content again and again. And we also wanted to be able to promote all of the books that we were nuggetizing, how we were calling the process. So basically, we came up together, we come up with a system that very, very rudimentary alpha version of what Social B was, which was actually some Google Sheets with very complex Excel formulas, basically, with Zapier integrations and with us doing manual work. So each time we had a new customer in the early days, I would manually have to go in and create a duplicate of these Google Sheets for that customer and set it up for them and so on. And it was a way for us to create different categories for the type of content that we wanted or the customers wanted to share, and to schedule them in such a way that they mix well together. So for example, if you want to share a promotional post, you can schedule the promotional category on Monday at 2 without saying, okay, I want this exact promotional post. And then you just need to make sure that those categories are filled with content. And the other benefit is that if you set your content to be evergreen, This means that we're going to post the items one by one until we get to the last one, and then we just jump to the first one. Our software and our system evolved since then, and we give much more flexibility also to one-off content. But in the early days, it was all about evergreen content and about scheduling with categories in mind and with recycling the content that you wanted to share multiple times.
Yeah, I love this feature. When I first got behind Social Bee, this blew me away. Sort of like the calendar and the different categories that you can use to schedule your posts, like promotional, evergreen, something that's fun, all these different categories. What's another feature that people see when they're looking at the platform for the first time and their eyes just get wide open? They get really excited about it and they think, oh, this can save me either a lot of time or this can help me grow my audience. What's another cool feature about the platform that customers like?
So I would definitely say that the main functionality is around having these categories, because if you want to have a good mix of content across your social profiles, so between your promotional posts, your own blog posts, some curated content, some more fun content, and so on. But if you're using a tool like Hootsuite, where you have the one queue, where you have to keep adding things to your queue, you have to drag and drop things in such a way that they come in the right order that you want. While in Social Bee, you just say, okay, I want to have these categories come up in this order. You fill your categories and it's done. So this would be number one. And number two would be the fact that you can recycle the evergreen content. But then besides this, I think there are a couple other functionalities that our customers really like. One would be the RSS integration. So basically, any WordPress website and most blogs out there have a functionality which is called RSS. It's not something for humans to use. It's for machines to talk between themselves. But basically, RSS is a technology that lets what, in this case, Social Bee know when there's a new blog post that was published on somebody else's website. So you can connect this RSS feed to Social Bee, and we have some fairly advanced features that you can set in there. So for example, because I'm a Tim Ferriss fan and I listen to all of his podcasts and all of his content, I have his RSS feed set up to Social Bee, and I have it set up so it goes on my Twitter each time that he has a new article going out. And I'm also mentioning his Twitter account. So I got retweeted by him a couple of times just because of this automation, which works, as you said, just automatically set it and forget it. So this would be one major function. And then the other part, which is also quite specific to us, is that besides the do-it-yourself software that we offer, we also have these concierge services, which are basically productized marketing services that sit on top of our platform. And these are services that are being delivered by a team of, we call them bees, but they're actually real human beings that are creating social media posts or blog content or helping you grow your audience on Instagram or LinkedIn. So we have a few of these services that can be added on top of the platform.
How are you finding the first adopters? Because it said here when I was doing some research, it said that you were actually selling the product before you actually had a full version that's out in the market, that could be out in the marketplace. So how are you approaching your early adopters?
So looking back, I backtracked into a model of what we did, which I call sell, service, scale. So basically, you first have to sell the end results, then you service that customer regardless of how you do it. And only once you did that, you start to scale the product and the marketing and so on. So specifically, how we did this is that, as I told, V1 was very duct tape solution, very hacked together solution of Google Sheets and Zapier integrations and things like that. It was definitely not something that people could just like sign up on a page, put their credit card details in and just use it. But it was good enough for me to be able to go on one-on-one calls with early adopters, people that we found via various startup groups, via Product Hunt, via Beta List, and so on. And for the first, I think, even couple of years, you could not sign up to Social Bee just on your own. You always had to go through a demo with myself. In the first couple of years, I think it was only myself doing these demos, where I would showcase the app. I would tell you about how we could help. And then if it was a good fit, then we would get you on board and then get you started and so on. And during these couple of years, this solution, which was almost entirely outside of our code base at first, because it was on Google Sheets and so on, we started building more and more of this functionality in Social Bee, to the point where now, of course, all of our functionality is our own. We still integrate with Zapier, so people can push content from Zapier to SocialBee and so on. But basically, we managed to get this duct tape solution and one by one build the functionality in-house. And now, of course, people just sign up on the web page and go through our regular onboarding process, and they don't have to go to a call. We still offer this because this is one of the things that people like about us, how approachable we are and how easily you can get an actual human being to talk to you, even in a one-on-one call, but you don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah, no. The startup groups that you mentioned Product Hunt and the startup groups. What were some of those startup groups? Were they on Reddit? Where were you finding these groups on Facebook?
I think that how we got the first, maybe even like 10-ish customers were actually because with Nugget, we had a very good Product Hunt launch. So especially back then, Product Hunt really had a lot of say, and it carried a lot of value, and everybody wanted to launch a Product Hunt. And if you got into the top 5 on Product Hunt, it really meant a lot of traffic and a lot of visibility. So because of that, we really planned and we worked a lot on our launch, and we managed to get in the top 5 in a quite competitive day, I would say. So because of that, I actually wrote a big guide. I think it was like 30 pages long of everything that we did to manage to be so successful on Product Hunt. And because I knew that guide was more valuable than my audience would have been, because we had a very small, I reached out to Founder Magazine, one of the startup entrepreneurship magazines that was quite popular, and we published it on their page. So it got a lot of visibility. And because I'm always about helping people, I also said, like, look, if anybody wants to do a Product Hunt launch and wants just help or an idea and so on, just feel free to reach out to me. So there were quite a few people who reached out to me to either like exchange ideas or for me to help them in one way or another. And this is how we got actually the first customer as well. Somebody who reached out and we were chatting about Product Hunt. And then we also talked about what we were doing on social. And this is before we had anything, like we had to scramble to get their credit card details and for them to be able to pay us and so on. But all of this happened because we were putting out a lot of value without really trying to get something in return, but we did got something in return eventually. And besides that, I think it was, for us, it was mainly about Facebook that was centered around entrepreneurship. And then we did do somewhat like growth hackish, if I can call it that way, solution where basically we were looking at all of the products that were new on Beta List, because Beta List is a website where people can showcase their upcoming products. And we knew that if it's an upcoming product, they will need social media presence and they will need some of our techniques to grow their audience. And then we were reaching out to them in a very manual and tailor-made way for everybody. So I was actually checking each of their website, and then I was trying to pull a few lines that really spoke to them. And then, of course, we also used some tools to automate what we could, but there was a lot of manual work involved. And because it was founder to founder, I think it was easier to get people on a call, and it was easier also to people to get on board with a solution, which was definitely not a good UX and definitely not a ready for prime time solution back then. But because it was other founders that were also probably early adopters, and they also knew how hard it is to build something and to start something, it was an easier sell.
Got you. That's wonderful. How many customers are currently using the platform, Avi? And what is the forecasted revenue for 2022?
We basically have two different groups of customers. So we have one, we did a few of AppSumo launches. I don't know if you're familiar with AppSumo, but it's a marketplace to basically buy lifetime deals. And us being mostly a bootstrap startup, this is how we managed to fund our growth by running such deals. So we got quite a few thousand people who are using us because they found us on AppSumo and they became customers that way. We haven't done, and we're not planning to do any lifetime deals for SocialBee. Hopefully never, but never say never. So now basically our focus is on monthly and yearly customers. We have about a couple thousand of such customers. And this year we're not sharing like full revenue numbers, but this year we're hoping to grow by at least 50%. In the first years, we were always like doubling year to year, but it's much easier to double when you're starting from nothing than it is once you get to a higher level. So this year we're aiming for a 50% growth.
Okay. And Avi, you also serve as a mentor at the Founder Institute in Frankfurt and Bucharest for other startups. So why Frankfurt?
I'm
Because
actually,
you're from Cluj, Romania. So
yeah. So I'm actually in Frankfurt because my wife, she's a professor at the university here. So I just follow her all over the world. I've been also together with her in Singapore. When we were actually starting out with Social Bee, we were in Singapore. So because of the time zone and because most of our customers are in the States, I was like taking calls at 2 a.m. And but that's what we had to do to survive basically. But now we're here also
yeah.
because of her work and because of how we have our company set up. We can work remotely, which came in handy when Corona hit, because it wasn't hard for us to just like shut down the office and everybody started working from home. Um, but as I said, I'm here because of her, and this is how I got involved with the Frankfurt startup ecosystem, and how I became a mentor at Founder Institute in Frankfurt, and I was first mentor in Bucharest, but now I'm in both locations basically.
Okay. And how many people are on the team at Social Bee?
We have a core team of about 25 people, and then we have a freelancing team for the concierge services of probably around 60 people now.
Okay, Avi, you're the remote CEO of an in-person team, and you're not in that city here. So how do you do it? How do you keep, the team motivated, functioning, growing the company? Any tips that you can share with other people, other startup founders that have remote teams in a different city? What would you suggest?
For me, I think the number one is the fact that I'm not alone in this. I have two co-founders that are helping both on the technical side and then also on the operational side, so we can share the responsibilities and everything that we have to do. So that makes things much more easier. But as I said, because I was always remote, even when the team was everybody in the same place, it's just part of our DNA. We worked on Slack from day one, and at one point before Corona, we got to like 40 people, because back then like also the freelancers were part of the core team, the concierge part. And it was funny, like you would go into our office that had like 40 people and it was dead silence, but from time to time you would hear somebody just laughing, and then it was just because somebody shared a fun meme on Slack. So it's just how we set it up from the beginning with Slack and with processes and procedures that are written down and so on. So because of this, it was not that hard for us, and it's part of how we do things. We do have also, depending on the teams and on the things that you're working on, we have various either daily stand-ups or weekly calls and things like that. And even though we now have our office back in Cluj, most people decided that they don't like to commute and they would rather work from home, even when that home is maybe just like 30 minutes away from the office. But people do go to the office from time to time. We also, when I'm there, I always try to make sure that we meet at the office. So we have also some real FaceTime from time to time, which I think is very important. And I feel that all of these working from home and working alone things, these are things that might end up costing us if we don't really take care of them, and we don't take care also of the human side of things. And people do want to, like with social animals, we want to interact. And for some, of course, we also have our friends and we meet people and so on. But the work life is a major part of our life. So I think it's also important to have this type of socializing. Now, luckily, we have our random channel on Slack where memes are shared and jokes are made and so on. But I still think the physical in-person thing is quite vital.
Yeah, no, that's one of the reasons why I come to a co-share space at least 2 days out of the week. And even though they're not my colleagues, it's just nice. Somebody knows your name. You say good morning. Maybe you go have lunch with them. That social engagement in person is vital. Even though I like working from home, I still need to just be around people, at least 1 or 2 days out of the week. And I'm that person in the kosher space where it's all quiet and then you hear somebody laugh out loud. I think that's me.
Nice.
At times reading a joke from somebody else or something like that. Since you're a mentor and you've mentored a lot of startups, just looking at your LinkedIn profile and knowing that you're part of this Founder Institute, what are some of the top mistakes that you come across in your experience working with other tech startups?
I think the number one mistake is And especially with startups in Romania. So Romania is quite a tech focused and engineering focused country when it comes to the software development. So we have a lot of very good talent when it comes to engineering, but we're just like starting to build that marketing and business muscle. So especially when it comes to Romania, but even with other startups, it's so much easier to start building and then think about how you're going to get customers, or if customers even care what you're building later on. And actually, as I see this, is a way to procrastinate and to hide behind code, because when you're building, you know what you're doing, you're building code, and code doesn't reject you. While if you're going to put this out in the market, you might find out that that target audience that you are aiming for will reject your initial idea at least. But that's crucial. You need to put it out there as soon as possible to see if your idea has legs, or if you need to change anything, or basically maybe it's something that you wouldn't even be able to turn into a business. So because of this, I really try to talk as much as possible about this self-service scale model, because especially in the B2B world, but also in the B2C world, there are always, you can find creative ways to mimic what you're trying to do and to really see if you can really solve the problem that you are trying to solve by using off-the-shelf tools, or by doing things by or by like hacking together things. As but it's so hard because people really want to build their thing, and they have their wishes and ideals and so on. So it's hard to get them to understand that, okay, let's try to talk with the customers. I'm trying to do that as much as possible, but I think it's that saying where even if somebody tells you like, look, don't put your hand on the stove because it might burn you, sometimes you have to put your hand on the stove to really know for yourself that it will burn you. So next time you will know not to put your hand on it. So yeah.
What you just said, code doesn't reject you. I love that, because that applies to so many different things, not necessarily just code, but I'll give you an example. We just did here at Bonjoro, we just did an integration with Pipedrive, and really excited for the team behind it. I'm excited with the good collaboration with the team at Pipedrive. I'm happy to start marketing it. And I feel like there's a sense of accomplishment because it's finally live, right? But here's the reality. Until I start talking with the first users of the integration, I really don't know if it's good. I really don't know where the friction is, whether or not they're having, an enjoyable experience. And it's something I need to remind myself, like, hey, that's only part of the work. The other half of the work, and really the important work, is talking to the customers, just like you mentioned. So I love that there. You also wrote a guide on some of the best tools that you recommend for launching, particularly a tech product, a SaaS product. You care to share some of those tools with the audience that have really helped you in growing Social B?
Yeah, so for right now, of course, my number one favorite tool is Social B. I might be a bit biased here though. And then we're actually also working on a brand new suite of tools and a brand new brand, which is called Ace. And of course, I like that as well. But then outside of our own space, definitely Zapier is the tool that I like the most. And it's exactly because of this. It helps you, without being a developer, to connect various systems that would normally not talk to each other directly. And with a bit of knowledge and understanding of how Zapier works, you can really build a lot of functionality. And first of all, you can even like build MVPs by using like one of these more low code or no code tools like Airtable and things like that together with Zapier. But then also besides that, we built a lot of operational efficiency in our company by using Zapier. So for example, in our case, each time when we have a new customer on the concierge part, so this is where an actual human being will have to do maybe social media post or some specific type of marketing content for that customer, we have a type form that's integrated in Social B. And once that happens with Zapier, we connect it to our Trello board to create like internal tasks for somebody to take over that customer. We send a message to some various Slack channels to let us know about this. We do follow-ups in a couple of weeks to make sure that we did proper onboarding and so on. So basically, you can really build a very robust workflow by just using off-the-shelf tools, and most of the times even free tools. Like, we are a relatively large Zapier customer, but when we started, when we just had a few customers, we didn't need the paid version. You can really get away with the free version of most of these tools. So if I would have to just pick one tool, I would definitely say Zapier, and then try to integrate it in your workflow as much as possible.
Yeah, no, Zapier is fantastic. I use it too. There's over, I think, 1,000 different tools that you can use Zapier to integrate with Bonjoro. Before we go, I'd like to ask each of my guests a couple of fun questions, just so the audience can get to know your personality a little bit, Avi. The first question I have for you is, what did you consider was rich when you were a kid? So when I was a kid, I thought other kids who got to go on vacation outside the state of Texas, I thought those kids were rich, right? So, and you, when you were a kid, what did you think was rich?
I remember a time when pagers became a thing in Romania, and I was quite young, but you could already see a few people with pagers. So this was before the cell phone period. And I know that felt so cool, and so like you've made it once you had the pager. So I would go with the pager.
I can picture my son when he gets of age. He's only 4 now, but asking me when he's a teenager, you carried around this thing that just gave you the phone number? You couldn't talk into it?
Yeah.
Oh God, the questions that I'm going to get in the comments from my kid when he grows up. Yeah. Okay. Second question for you is, well, wait a minute. Did you carry a pager before the cell phone, before you got your cell phone?
I did not. I did have a cell phone relatively early because I just also found that so cool. I didn't use it that much because it was quite expensive too, especially to do an outbound call. But as soon as I was able to get a secondhand cell phone, which also for your kid, he would probably not understand that they were like brick-sized phones. It wasn't like these cool sleek phones that we have today. But I did not get to have a pager. I jumped over that stage.
Yeah, my first cell phone used to pull out the antenna.
Of course. Yeah. Same.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Second question for you, Avi, is what age did you have your first kiss?
Oh, I think so. I was in probably 9th grade, which means, I don't know what that means, like 13-ish, something like that.
Okay. Okay. Was it a good kiss? Do you remember? Our first kisses are not that good, so you can be honest.
Probably it felt good by then. I had no comparison, so yeah.
Avi, thanks so much for being on Innovators Can Laugh. Where can people learn more about?
They can just find me on all the socials, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, or just ovi@socialbee.io. I'm happy to help other entrepreneurs as much as possible. So feel free to reach out. Just ovi@socialbee.io or Avi Negrion on LinkedIn.
All right, Avi, pleasure chatting with you. La rivedere.
La rivedere.
Thanks for listening to the show. If you enjoyed it, I'd really appreciate it if you could give us a review and star rating. Also, don't forget to sign up for the ICO newsletter at innovatorscanlaugh.com, where you can get the bio and details of each guest.